Welcome back to Crypto Zone's Peer-to-Peer Financial Empowerment. Hashtag Love All Serve Others. What is money and currency? In this podcast today, we'll discuss the fundamentals of what money is, the forms that it's taken through history and time and millennia, and of course we'll discuss some of the affairs that are going on presently in July 2020 that are very important. And the reason why I'm doing this podcast with this title, because at this point in history, it's very important for us to remind ourselves about what money really is. Because there's great instability, there's a pandemic, there's money printing going on like no time in history. It's off the charts. And then there's an undercurrent of civil unrest. But what money is a language. Money is a language. It's a linguistic expression of value exchange. It actually is intangible in a sense, and it exists, say, between two parties. It's somewhere between them in the air, if you will. If I say, I'll give you $35,000 for that car, the money actually is the agreement that we make between the two of us. And currency is the physical representation of that monetary amount that we use to exchange that value. Now, with currency having real backing or a actual physical backing of it, then like gold, then currency could be construed as money also. But fundamentally speaking, money has to have three fundamental characteristics to qualify it as a money or to be used as a money widely. Number one, it has to be a store of value. Number two, a unit of account. And number three, a medium of exchange. Now, store of value, classically through millennia, gold. And the reason why that is used is also closely associated with scarcity. Unit of account, you think of gold being broken up into ounces or silver into coins or greenbacks or paperbacks with numbers on it. Also, medium of exchange is just simply means that it has to be easily tradable everywhere. So assuming that money has those three characteristics, it can be widely used. But yes, wars today are still waged for riches, gold, resources, and energy, but the battlefield of this decade will be on the internet in a war for currency domination, for that world reserve currency status. Because of the instability going on today, who knows what's going to happen? I do believe that within the next, say, 12 to 24 months or 36 months, that the landscape of the global economy will be much different than today. And there is right now going on what I call the Trifecta Tsunami of, number one, population, number two, technology, and number three, specifically peer-to-peer financial technology. Through history, it seems that money predated writing. The earliest manuscripts that have been found seem to be ledgers of account, and so they recorded agreements. And so that's a great example of what money is. It's an agreement. And back in prehistory, some of the things that they used for the currency, for the transaction, would have been cattle or animals or agriculture or food, or we know that tobacco enjoyed some use as money, shells. But when you look at, say, fast forward to 400 BC to 100 AD, the Athens, they used the drachma. The Roman Empire used the denarius. The Byzantines after them used the solidus, which was a gold coin. The Arabians used the dinar. Florence enjoyed a time of power with their currency. But in 1450, with the Portuguese nation, we saw what is something that was widely known as a world reserve currency. And that was because of the emergence of much more global reach through an expansive naval fleet. Spain in 1530 gained power with their currency. The Dutch had what they called the Dutch India Tea Company, and that was a private entity. But that is when paper began to be used as a currency with numbers on it. France in 1720, British came to power with the British pound sterling in 1815, and the U.S. with the dollar about 1920 at the end of World War I. But essentially, more specifically, in 1944 through near the end of World War II, through what's known as the Bretton Woods Conference, which occurred in Bretton Woods area of New Hampshire at the Washington Hotel. There was 600 plus delegates from over 44 nations that got together there nearing the end of World War II to come up with a global economic system. And because the U.S. at that time had by far the greatest amount of gold reserves, they gave the U.S. the scepter as the world reserve currency, and out of that agreement, out of that conference, they pegged the dollar to gold at $35 an ounce. And from then until 1971, the world enjoyed an era, albeit short-lived, of relative calm and lower volatility and very, very few bankruptcies. But in 1971, what happened, what is probably the most iconic, one of the most, if not the most important economic events in world history. Richard Nixon announced the pegging of the dollar to gold. He took the dollar off the gold. It was no longer backed by gold, essentially making the dollar a fiat currency. And fiat means by decree or by order. And that is the way the practical 99% or more of the world's nations operate, with a fiat currency or a currency by decree. They can print it as they want to. It really leads to a lot more inflation and a wider gap of wealth between the rich and the poor. But that's what happened in 1971. Any world reserve currency, the reason why it's so powerful is because every other nation on earth has something that they're jealous about. Because if you have the world reserve currency, you have something that's called seigniorage. And what that is, it just means that you can you can afford to purchase, all the transactions are less expensive. For example, if the U.S. wants to buy something from China, they buy it in dollars. If the China wants to buy something from the U.S., they buy it in they have to transfer the Chinese yuan into dollars. If the Argentines want to buy something from China, they have to first exchange the Argentine peso into dollars, and then again change the dollars into Chinese yuan. So you get my drift. It's really a very, very, to have the world reserve currency status affords its citizens something very powerful financially and economically. Today, we have 4 types of currency. We have nation-state currency, the dollar, British pound sterling, Japanese yen, Chinese yuan, for example, the peso. We also have, number 2, corporate currencies, of which not one is launched yet, but very close. Some of you have heard of the Libra coin, which was inspired by Mark Zuckerberg and the Facebook project. Number 3, we have CBDCs, which is a trend. Trends are your friend. CBDCs are central bank digital currencies. There's 6 nations who have them right now already. Venezuela, Ecuador, Senegal, Tunisia, Singapore, and almost China. China is trialing in 4 different economic zones something that they call the DCEP. DCEP, it stands for Digital Currency Electronic Payment. And we believe that, I think by the end of 2020 or Q1 of 2021, or certainly by Q2 of 2021, it'll come out. But these are digital currencies. They're not cryptocurrencies. The thing that separates, let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself. The 4th kind of currency we have is people's currency, or Bitcoin, which was launched January 3rd, 2009. And the thing that differentiates that from CBDCs, or digital currencies, is that it employs and utilizes a triple ledger accounting system. And this is massively important because previous to Bitcoin, we have a ledger for me and a ledger for you. And depending on who those entities are, there can be a great lack of transparency for the rest of us. And so what it really leads to is just a wider gap. I mean, it leads to corruption and just a wider gap in riches between the poor and the rich. And it doesn't bode well for equality or equity or fairness. But with Bitcoin, there's a ledger for me, a ledger for you, and a forever ledger for everybody that's on the internet. And that is something that is of supreme importance, because for the rest of the world, it affords this notion of transparency, and it is of great value. Even so much so that right now we estimate that there's about 100 million people who transact in Bitcoin and or other cryptos, which represents about 1.25% of the global populace, who have bought, sold, custodied, staked, saved, some form of cryptocurrency. And so when we think of global world reserve currency status, and the present state of affairs as we exist in July of 2020, with the money printing off the charts, and with the lockdown of the economy, the virtual, I mean, it's incredible, because for the first time in history we have a supply and demand shock. There's no supply and there's no demand. So the money printing that is going on is really a Band-Aid and more of a distraction from the truth of what's really going on. So this is the reason for why I'm discussing this in this podcast. It is very, very important for us to be reminded about what true money is. And that, assuming that we realize that and remember that will greatly affect what we choose to use as money, or choose to invest in as money, or choose to do with the quote-unquote money that we do have in our pockets. One thing that's very, very important for the dollar is that the U.S. has by far the greatest military might in the entire world. In 2013, the Pentagon came out with a statement. They said that they have 5,000 military outposts, of which 600 are outside of the U.S. But Politico, which is a media outlet, they think it's more like 800 or 1,000. But whatever it is, take this to account. The U.S. has 10 supercarriers. The rest of the world has 2. China has both of them, and one of them started as a floating casino, so it can't be the best. But the point is this. You take all of the long-range firepower of all the nations combined against the U.S., and it's 4% of the long-range firepower of just one supercarrier, and we have 10 of them. And that's not to mention that they're soon to launch 2 more supercarriers that are multi-billion dollar worth, and they are utilizing a technologically advanced laser system, which will greatly increase the efficiency. And the reason why I bring this up is because 85% of all the goods that are bought and sold, they travel the ocean blue. And so to have a navy like the U.S. has is extremely important, and essentially supremely important to protect their nation state currency. So we are at a state right now. It's a tipping point, I believe, because of all of the money printing that's going on, and because of the 8 billion in population right now, and because of just the emergence of the internet and technology, and specifically with the emergence of true peer-to-peer financial technology, the trifecta tsunami of population, technology, and specifically peer-to-peer financial technology. This affords us the opportunity to choose to enter into an economy that is different than the pre-existing currencies, and it's a truly freeing and very possibly valuable thing to be considering for what to do with our own money. Certainly also we could consider gold, silver, platinum, art, land, water, food, energy, solar, battery power, real estate, transportation, those things to be investing into. But this is a very important time in history. It's when I say this is not the time to be buying new shoes, if you know what I mean. I super appreciate your attention. Hashtag love all, serve others. I wish you well. I wish you wealth. I wish you health. And until next time, peace.